Right. Welcome to this new edition of All Viewpoints. I have Coach Taz with me, and I'm going to ask her to introduce herself.
Well, thank you, Kimmy, for the opportunity for creating a platform for folks like myself and others that can bring visibility to the industry, and also to the many people that are in the industry. Doing great things. So thank you. My name is Taz Brown. I am currently a Enterprise Agile Coach. I'm a DevOps coach, a Kanban coach, trainer, consultant. I currently work at Cisco Systems in the what we call the CX Agile Transformation Office. And I've been in the game about 12 years, roughly. Started out as a Scrum Master and then uh, moved from that role into an Agile Coach role and then an Enterprise Agile Coach role. And I'm loving it, and I'm excited to be a part of this industry and bring value to the industry. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining me. And I looked at your LinkedIn. We've been following each other for some time now
Yeah.
on LinkedIn. And I
Yeah.
looked at it and I said, what made Taz go from an engineering background to becoming a Scrum Master and Agile Coach? And currently you're a Kanban trainer.
Yeah. Well, I know it's not a traditional path, to say the least. But for me, I evolved, right? Because as a human, we do that. And while I loving the engineering part, where I started out like in the help desk space, and then moved to more of a what we call a systems administrator, working mostly with Windows and then Windows systems or Windows operating systems. And then I quickly moved to something more sort of outside my wheelhouse, which was Linux engineering. So that was really an exciting time for me to work with many great, talented engineers and software developers, and I learned a lot in that space. But then I realized as I was getting older and getting more mature, I was doing other things. I just realized I wanted to do more, and I felt like, but I want to do more from the standpoint of the sort of the emotional side of things, where I wanted to be more of a servant leader. I wanted to help others basically optimize their potential, because I was seeing many engineers and developers who didn't optimize their potential. And so from that, I basically asked to take on a new role as a Scrum Master because I had learned about the role. I felt like it was a good fit for me. And then I asked, and I got the permission to be the first sort of Scrum Master. And it took off from there, basically. I work with these teams, obviously, using the Scrum framework. But as I was doing that, I also realized that I was much more of an agnostic person. I was more and I was more pragmatic. And then I realized I wanted to learn more things, not just Scrum. So I went and learned extreme programming, test-driven development, behavior-driven development, and then Kanban. And then that's where I realized that I had a great love for that way of working, because it was a management approach. It wasn't. People get it confused sometimes. This philosophy, for me, is about that it's a management system that can be applied on top of any way of working currently. So if you're using Scrum, if you're using XP, if you're using TDD, whatever, it's a management approach. It's not a methodology. It's not a framework. It's an approach, a management approach. So yeah, I just fell in love with it, and then I went and decided to take the training at Kanban University, and basically it's never stopped. I became and it's not easy, trust me. The programs that David J. Anderson and the Kanban University and the David J. Anderson School of Management, the training is hard, all right? But it's not only, and it's not just theoretical, it's practical, and that's what I like about it. So I started out taking some of the team Kanban practitioner training, then the Kanban management professional, where you learn Kanban system design, then you learn how to improve that Kanban system as you evolve, because the Kanban method is about evolutionary change. and about managed evolution. And so I then went and took some other training. So now I'm at the expert level where I'm now not just a Kanban coaching professional. I'm now also a Kanban trainer and then a Kanban consultant. And so I had to go through a program where I had to write a case study out, a large case study, to become a Kanban, consultant, accredited Kanban consultant. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I'm literally working at Cisco, and I am driving the scaling initiatives for the most part. And so I have scaled and implemented a lot of Kanban at Cisco.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. It's interesting. You've come a long way. I must say, I only took up a Kanban training. When was I can't even remember, but it was a long time ago. I only did,
Okay.
and it was quite intensive. So
Yeah.
I resonate with what you're trying to say. However, some people would say Kanban or Scrum. I don't believe that should be, but what are your thoughts on that?
Oh no. I think that's because there is those myths around Kanban that unfortunately are out there, right? And we're trying to combat those. That's why we, having a platform like this to be able to talk about it so that people can discover that, again, we're talking about a management approach, whether it's because we're talking about knowledge work, right? Complex adaptive environments. So the Kanban training or the Kanban method, right, which is a method, and there are different philosophies, and people get them all, they mesh them all together, thinking they all mean the same thing, and they don't. My training is in the Kanban method, which is again a management approach to service delivery, business agility, right? And so with that, there are what we use in Kanban coaching is what we call the Kanban maturity model, as well as evolutionary change management approach. So that's why we can say confidently that, and right now we have a new training out there that's called Scrum Better with Kanban, because people again have this misconception that you can't use Kanban with Scrum. Kanban is a management approach, so you can use that management approach with anything on top of anything. If you're doing HR related work, you're doing finance, if you're doing sales, it doesn't matter. It's a management approach, and it teaches you through the training and through especially if you're taking the training, right? The trainer will teach you all of these aspects. What are the core practices of Kanban? What are the change management principles of Kanban? And what are the service delivery principles as well?
Interesting. I think Kanban is actually really deep, and you can use it for all type of, especially if you're trying to look at a bottlenecks. But I mean, you are the expert here. If you're looking at bottlenecks and what are the things hindering you from getting from point A to B. But then I noticed that you also differentiate between flow and Kanban model. What is the difference?
It's not that I necessarily differentiate. I mean, there's 6 core practices of Kanban, and that is: 1, you want to visualize; 2, you want to manage the workflow; 3, you want to limit WIP; 4, you want to implement feedback loops; 5, you want to establish explicit policies; and 6, you want to improve collaboratively and evolve experimentally. So when you think of flow, think about it. If you are manufacturing, right, or you're in HR, everything has a flow to it. It doesn't mean you have to be doing Kanban to be looking and analyzing or modeling your flow, workflow, or your flow. So those are sort of separate, because again, but Kanban again is about managing workflow. So we model the workflow, the existing workflow, the real workflow, not this ideal that you might have about what you do, but we go from end to end, and how do you get work in and how do you get work out? And those bottlenecks, delays, right? And wasteful, we call it waste, right? So we analyze those practices, whether you're doing are you doing value added activities currently, or are you doing value added activities? And the one thing about the Kanban method is we use what we call the static approach, which is system thinking approach, to introducing Kanban as a stepping stone to create designing a system for that service. And we do it one at a time using static. And static is just like an 8-step process. You don't have to use all 8 steps, and they're not sequential. But if you use them, you're gonna start your team looking at a system and thinking about it from a systems point of view, and not from an individual engineering point of view or developer point of view or program manager point of view or a project manager point of view. It's the system that we're working with. Kanban focuses on the work, not the workers.
Exactly, and which is very, very important. I think we used to live in a world whereby you have a manager right behind you or breathing down on your neck and telling you what to do or what not to do. And I did those years ago. I was kind of like fascinated by it. So, wow, I didn't think there was something like this, and it's very interesting. But if someone was to kind of like be interested in knowing more about Kanban model, where should they start?
I would say certainly you can start with Kanban University. Again, you have to determine for yourself what's the best way forward for you, right? There are a couple of different philosophies out there. I chose the one I truly resonated with. And because of the work I do, I love having the tools, and I love using the Kanban management model, which is basically a variety of different practices based on your organizational maturity. So we go in and we start from where you are, right? We don't look to make big bang changes. We look to make small incremental changes that hopefully lead to more comfortability and less discomfort with change. And so I would say start with Kanban University if you like, or there's other ones out there. I can't really speak to them because of my connection. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. There's Cobalt, there's others like prokanban.org and others. But my training comes from the David J. Anderson Kanban method. He's the pioneer. And all my, like today, actually, right after this, I'm taking a enterprise services planning expert track, which is training that David J. Anderson is giving. So right after I finish with you, I got to go do some training. So it's constantly leveling up, constantly getting better. And then it allows me to bring in my different tool sets into my consulting business, but also working with Cisco.
I want to take you back to your days as an engineer developer, because you did. What were some of the challenges that engineers faced when Agile, Scrum, or Kanban are being introduced? Because I know this is a very hot topic. Scrum Master struggles to kind of like connect with developers. I don't know if that's the case. I
almost hesitant to say that the framework or the methodology you're using is what's not connecting, and it's really the human connection that may not be.
Let's talk about the human connection.
Well, one of the things that I try to remember is that, first of all, I'm not here to fix you or fix anyone. People are not broken. You have talented people and that already, doing their job, but there may be opportunities for them to think about it. Like I almost think of myself as a thinking partner, I guess, because I'm also a coach, right? So I look at being a thinking partner to these individuals, right? So I need to understand them. I need to know them on a personal level. I need to realize that they think mostly from the right side of their brains. And I help to challenge that a bit by bringing in different things that I ask, right? What do you think if we were to do this? Because in my experience, this is the results we got. Would you want to experiment with that? Again, remember I said you want to improve collaboratively and you want to evolve experimentally. I think those are words that anybody can use, even if they're not a Kanban trainer, expert. Anybody should probably want to do that. So because I wasn't in that space, being truly proficient or accelerating or having technical excellence requires you to constantly practice, constantly evolve your experience and your skills. And that's how I approached it when I was younger, when I was in the space. It's a little bit different now because there's a lot of burdening going on. There's a lot of overloading on these engineers and these developers that are going on. People are more focused, unfortunately, some organizations are more focused on utilization and not innovation and ideation.
Yeah.
And that's where we fall short for these engineers and developers. We're not doing them a service. We're doing them a disservice because we want them to, if you think about mastery, autonomy, right? These aspects, that's what they truly, I think, thrive under. But they also have to be allowed to evolve and to increase their knowledge, their skills. And some of that, because they're so focused on utilization and focused on, oh my God, we got a lot to, we got so much work that has to be done. They forget those very important things that if you overload, you overwork someone, you overstimulate them to the point where you're going to end up with what? Turnover, right? You're going to lose really good engineers and developers. And so we have to think about that from we're asking them to do certain things as agilists, right? But are we doing it based on who they are individually and how they respond to their environment? Because they may all respond quite differently to the environment. And you have to get a sense of that by engaging them. I allow them to talk a lot about what they do because they love to talk about what they do. And you can see the light go on. You can see the eyes get bright when they're talking about themselves and who they are. So we have to be interested in who they are, not just interested in Agile and what Agile brings, because Agile's not going to bring anything unless you are connected, you create a connection and you create a partnership with people. So that's how I look at it.
That's interesting because I've always been an opinion of that when you get to know someone, when you get to understand what they do, how they do it, they relate more with you. But people listening might be saying, oh, well, Taz, you have a background in engineering, you've done development work, so it's easier for you to say that. And they don't have that technique. What would you say to those people?
Wow. It's easy for me to say that. That's a good point. I think I do a lot of self-reflection, right? I think as agilists and as in any field, not even Agile, right? You have to be able to be self-aware, I think. I think you're doing a disservice to yourself and to others in your field or outside your field if you don't have a sense of self-awareness. I learned this a long ago when reading Lisa Atkins' book, right? She talks a lot about self-reflection, self-awareness, and self-journaling, right? So, you're doing self-reflection journaling. I do that consistently, and that has really helped me. But being in the field and doing it a bit, right, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not able to empathize or again, have a sense of how I was then and how I've totally shifted, I've changed. And now I see engineering and I see in developing different because it is different. When I was a systems engineer or a systems administrator, you didn't have to be, there was no DevOps. There was no Python, having to be a developer who knows Python, who needs the code, right? That was not, at that time, I was a traditional systems administrator dealing with a lot of hardware, software, upgrades, that kind of thing, optimizing the system, right? Dealing with, users, user management. This stuff now is different. DevOps came into being, right? And now most engineers, most developers need to know how to code for the most part, or have some knowledge about coding, structure, coding. And so it's different. So I respond to it in based on the current state of affairs. So that's what I would say. It's totally different. Back then, we weren't doing a lot of Agile, to be honest. I wasn't part of teams that were using Kanban or Scrum or any of that. That's why I asked you to bring in Agile, because we weren't looking at that as a plausible way forward for our work. I just saw a lot of work not getting done. A lot of just this organization around the work, not a lot of feature management, not a backlog optimization, no real PO, or any of that. So that we had to start from the beginning, and I had to convince my leaders that that was a possible way forward for us. And it worked, and it was very beneficial. But eventually the team evolved, right? And they didn't longer, because they matured, they no longer wanted to do Scrum. And so they wanted to try other things. They definitely focused on mob programming. They definitely focused on, testing was an issue at the time. So they started to do much more BDD, using Gherkin syntax and all of that. So now it's different. And that's the way it always will be. It's different. I mean, it evolves.
It does. And I guess what I'm taking away from what you said, in addition to having that people skills, which you mentioned, so being able to connect with others, is also not imposing or trying to impose Scrum, right?
Right.
So your team did bring in someone about Agile, and then they decided on Scrum at some point, but then they moved on into mob programming, testing, which, in my own opinion, is all about getting the work done. Not
Exactly.
really what frameworks or what box are we going to fit this in.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Exactly. I agree.
suggestions would you give Scrum Masters who are still struggling with, you have to be Scrum, I've been hired to become a Scrum Master, and then I have to teach you Scrum?
Well, that's a good question. I think we have the word Scrum Master, right? Is I mean, it's an interesting word in itself. I've never really, I'll be honest, like that word or that name, but ideally, I think the advice I can give to those that are looking to be Scrum Masters or looking to be Agilists or coming to the industry is to be humble, because master doesn't mean that you come in and hammer people with Scrum and what you think Scrum should be or what it is, and say, because I'm the Scrum Master, you got to do this, without listening to people, without giving them the respect to hear them out. Because I think the framework itself is, I think maybe there's maybe because of the training they give. Again, I don't know what right. There's a lot of different training out there, but one thing I noticed about it is you can't just if you're gonna learn, once you learn the framework, that's not your work is not over. I mean, you just begun, because now you have to again, be humble when you come into an organization, come into a place where people are already comfortable doing what they do. And so for you to come in and just immediately start making changes is a problem. It's going to result in a problem, and it's going to result as you looking like a bit of the outsider and a little bit of an enemy. Come in really being passionate about getting to know them, right? So it's like you observe, you listen, actively listen, and you walk. Now, of course, I'm talking virtual walking or physical walking, whichever one you're doing today. And get to know people and interact with them before you even start thinking about making any change or any of that, right? Because maybe you will realize that you might have to do things a little bit differently than you thought when you came in. Because again, Scrum is a framework, so it's not complete, it's incomplete, right? It's meant to be incomplete because it's a framework. So we have to make sure that, and understand the 12, please some understanding of the 12, or read it or know it, the 12, principles of the manifesto and the 4 values as well. I find that some newer Scrum Masters come in and have no idea of what that is. They couldn't even I say they use it as a deer in headlights, unfortunately, that they don't really know it very well. And how can you, I mean, again, because they kind of are just stuck in this Scrum Master mindset or this Scrum Master container. I said, try to work toward being a true Agilist, right? Yeah. Which means you know a lot of things that you could potentially use to help your teams, right? Because at the end of the day, you're a servant leader, and if you don't find new and interesting and innovative ways to help your team, are you really doing them a service, right? You could say, "Oh well, I facilitate the Scrum events." Okay, great, and
then what?
And then what? That's all. I mean, so you do that all day, every day. What do you think they're going to think you are? Are they going to think that you're maybe a change agent? Are they going to think you're an impediment remover? Are they going to think you are a sort of a business, you are you're able to help the business through understanding the processes and figuring out what processes are just wasteful and which processes add value?
Yep.
Yeah, there's those 6 stances, right? There used to be 8, and then they sort of brought it down to 6 stances. But the idea is don't just stay in that facilitation mode. And then when you're facilitating is about creating an open space, right? You facilitate it, but you also ignite thoughts. You ignite and you challenge and you ask questions, right? Because you're also a coach. I know. What? Yeah, Scrum Masters are coaches. And I wish and Enterprise coaches and Scrum Masters are all coaches. We just are maybe potentially at a different part of the organization. And so certain things we do may be a little bit different in how we approach things, because Scrum Masters tend to be at the team level, but doesn't mean that they have to stay at the team level or think at the team level only. They can think at the organizational level, and they should know what the business is all about, because your teams should know what their business is all about. So be humble and keep learning.
Keep learning. I'm going to underline what your last statement before be humble, keep learning, which is a Scrum Master as a coach. I think some people miss that out and say, oh, well, I'm not coaching, I'm just a Scrum Master. No, people forget that Scrum Master is not an entry level.
Right. No, it's not. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, that's absolutely true. But I think in the way in which we go about it is the perception that it's entry level. And that's unfortunate. We got to figure out a way forward so that we continually make it known through that we're professionals. Yes, we're leaders who serve, but we're also, we're not at the entry level, even though sometimes Scrum Masters do come in and they may be at a junior level, that, and then eventually maybe go to a senior level, or they might come in as a senior level. But it's not an entry level role.
No, it's not. It's not. Only recently did I started noticing this junior Scrum Master, senior Scrum Master. In the past, it used to be just one.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You know what I think that comes from is that it's when you get paid at a certain level, right? You have to, that people, if you're making 100 plus a year or whatever it might be. I'm not saying everybody starts at that. Maybe they start at 80, 90, I don't know. But traditionally, typically, you may be starting out at 100 plus going into a Scrum Master role. But I think, unfortunately, sometimes that entry into the role it sort of negates the fact that you may not have really all the competencies that are needed to be a effective Scrum Master, to be some people might just want to be a good Scrum Master, right? They just want to do the least and just, do that. But there are a lot of us who want to make sure that the industry is represented by experienced people who are effective at being a Scrum Master, effective at being coaches, and they continuously are learning. And like when you come in and you don't want to give a presentation, or you're hesitant to give a presentation as a Scrum Master, that's problematic, because this is what you do. You train others, you facilitate things, you teach, you're a teacher as well. So you got a new PO coming in that really don't understand the different, what it means to be a PO inside an Agile team, right? You have to help them understand what that looks like and what should be happening, ideally for them to be effective as a PO on, on a Scrum team. And if you don't know that knowledge and you're not able to teach that, that's problematic as well. So.
And I know I wasn't tracking what you were saying one by one, but when you were talking about the skills that a Scrum Master, or let's just say coach, because I say Scrum Master and Agile Coach, like you said,
yeah,
we're all coaches.
Yes.
Well, one of the important skill a coach should have is a connection with people. And you mentioned it like 4 times, right? What are the other ones that a coach should have?
Wow, we probably could go a long time in this conversation talking about this, but for the just to be clear, you want to know what sort of competencies that Scrum Masters or coaches need to have beyond just creating a connection. Am I correct? Do I understand?
Yes.
That's
So
what
what
you're
are
asking me?
the other skills? Because people would want to come in and say, well, I don't want to be a Scrum Master because you said Agile coaches I'm sorry, Scrum Master coaches as well. I want to be an Agile coach. However, there's a huge jump.
Yeah.
There's no hierarchy. So what are the skills that people need?
Wow. Well, certainly they should understand more than Scrum. I think that's the big part of why it's challenging, that transition, because again, coaches seem to have a comprehensive set of competencies typically. Now you can use the Agile coaching wheel that was built, or the one that the X-Wing model that Lisa Atkins created, to look at some of the different aspects like transformation mastery, business mastery, technical mastery. You being in an advisory role, right? Or a teaching role, or again, consulting role, right? These are many competencies. But along with that, you have to take some additional training, I would say, especially if you're new to it. Now, you might get a chance in an organization by asking for more, more how do you say it, opportunities to be a coach, or to be in that role. Um, you can certainly show and demonstrate your abilities around coaching, um, but ideally, that jump really requires you to know more than Scrum, because that just gonna, if you just know Scrum, then
Yeah.
if somebody is asking, then you're limited by the knowledge you have, and the opportunities or options or advice, not necessarily advice, but I think you're limited in your ability to really help coaches.
Hmm.
Because remember, typically you're asking powerful questions, right? I might throw in a clean question. Well, if you don't know anything about clean language, or you've never taken some systems, coaching, you may not be able to do that, right? Or know when you should do it or when you can do it. So I would also say, get a coach. Every Scrum Master should have a coach. I know you're a coach, but there are coaches that are at a higher level than we are. I certainly have a coach that is at a higher level than me and much more experienced than me. So Scrum Masters needed to find mentees, mentors, or coaches. You don't have one, you're seriously limited. And especially if you want to go far and you definitely want to be a coach, you got to start putting it into practice. Join meetups, right? There's lots of coaching opportunities where people create environments to go in and practice coaching. You don't have to be perfect at it or good at it. The idea is you get advice from people who do it all the time, so it'll make you better. It'll make you better. Set them up yourself. I did that when I was a Scrum Master. When I knew I wanted to be a coach, is I would set up sessions with people, and of course I learned through training as well. I see Agile, there's ICF, right? Um, uh, that you can there's ORSC, right? There's a lot of different opportunities that really you need to self-reflect and be self-aware about what kind of coach you want to be, right? Because there's athletic coaches, there's what we call uh business coaches, there's executive coaches, right? There's a lot of different coaches out there. But being an agile coach or professional coaching is quite different, right? So you gotta know what you don't know.
That is very important, I must say. And there's a lot of nuggets that you've shared. And I hear, I have a coach, I have a mentor, which is very important. We were talking Brown about the numbers of training that you have been does not always help on the job.
Yeah, that's true.
need from other people.
You want to navigate through the complexities of retirement strategies. It can be simple.
Can you repeat that a little bit? I think I broke, there was a quick something broke and I couldn't hear the last question you
I
asked.
said we were talking earlier on before the session started that the number of training or workshop that you attend does not always help you on the job.
No,
You need people to help. You need
Yeah.
some form of, I don't know, outside of that training for you to do a better job as a Scrum Master or an Agile coach.
yeah, I don't see enough practicing going on, right? I don't see enough of Scrum dojos or immersive learning or practical application of these things. Like if you go in, I hear a lot of, you know, and I'm certainly not trying. I'm one of those people. I'm a very optimistic person. So, but I know that some of the responses I received about or pain points around Scrum Masters is that they don't know enough and they're not willing to do more to learn. Like they're literally aren't doing, they're not reading books, they're not writing or speaking, and you know, they just come in, do their 9 to 5, you know, facilitate some Scrum events and go home. Now, that is, I know the organization, the culture of that organization can sometimes hamper Scrum Masters to and lead them to maybe not try new different things or try to be pushed too hard because of course they want to stay employed. I get that. But outside learning is critical and imperative because what if you decide, okay, this what you're doing now or in the, you know, the business, the company that you're working for now isn't stretching you enough or you're not able to do more that you want to do, and you move on to the next opportunity, but you're still the same, you know, you're still the same. You haven't changed. You haven't changed in your knowledge. You haven't, you know, gone out and learned new things, right? So you're basically might potentially be, you know, in the same position that you've been in because you don't know any more. So you don't know anything else to do. What if your team is, you know, fighting internal conflict? Do you know how to deal with this 5 dysfunctions of a team? Have you looked into any of that? How willing are you to, you know, even if you have no knowledge of it, go and research it and say, okay, my team is fighting into this internal strife that is causing us to lose sight of the customer and of the increment that we're building or the service we're providing. Let me go research, you know, how do you handle, you know, what are there any techniques to handle internal team conflict? Go learn it. Even if you have to learn it on the job, learn it, right? Add that value because as you see what's going on in the market right now, it's getting tougher and tougher. You know, people are definitely, our industry is taking a hit, right? And a lot of people are afraid, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a little bit because I know that a lot of organizations, like you said, in masses offloading, so to say, their agile professionals. How do one stay relevant? Right?
You're gonna have to reinvent yourself in some way. One of the things that I do, right? Obviously, we know that there has been this you know, AI, ChatGPT stuff, right? Machine learning, all of this stuff, large language models. Now, we're not going to lose our jobs, honestly, to AI. You're going to potentially lose your job to someone who's knowledgeable, has used AI and demonstrated an effective way to use it in their role. And when somebody hears that and they see match you up with another candidate with similar skills, but you are here talking about more advanced, more, you know, you're talking more about how you can use AI, right, in your role. They're more likely to have a little bit of a, you know, jump on you and likely to get the job before you would get the job. So constant, like I said, when constant learning and continuous learning is no joke in our field and in many fields. And if you don't learn, you know, continue to evolve your knowledge and learn new things, you're going to be obsolete in the industry.
Absolutely.
And it's not easy right now. Yeah, and we have to, as Agilists, we have to figure out, we have to be willing to say we got it wrong. We got something wrong, or we're not doing something right. Because why is this happening all of a sudden? Right? We need to keep talking. We have to, as Agilists, continue to talk about our, being self-aware about where we went wrong, or potentially how can we go, so that we can open up the opportunity and the space to say, okay, how do we go forward now? All right, we made mistakes, but everybody makes mistakes in all industries and all, so it's not an uncommon thing. But I think if you don't address it, the symptoms, and to figure out, okay, is this, are these dysfunctions? And then go forward and say, okay, what's the true purpose? What's the true why? And then ultimately saying, okay, how do we measure, we solution, and then we measure that solution. It's almost like it's interesting. The way I'm putting this is really around something I learned, which is dysfunction mapping by Michael Lloyd recently. And he goes through this sort of pragmatic, non-silver bullet approach to change in the organization. We have to rethink this. We have to stop beating people over the head with words, right? And we have to start demonstrating how the things that we are applying is, or using or helping the team to discover are working in their, working to their advantage. And that's what I certainly do with leadership. Leadership is the lever of all transformation. And if we don't get leadership involved, you see what's happening. Leadership is basically saying, we no longer need you. Because they don't even know what it truly means to be agile, to have that mindset, to understand how their role has to impact the environment, the culture, and they have to not use power, but empower. And so the leadership style has to be way different and sometimes there are organizations where the leadership style just doesn't lend itself to that type of change.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, you mentioned earlier on about the mistakes that we've made, and some people would say, well, they're lessons learned, whichever way you want to address it. I mean, we'll still do certain things that we look back and think, that didn't work, or that worked really well.
Yeah.
Some people are already saying that Agile is dead, and then what's next? What are your thoughts on that?
Nothing is dead. I mean, think about the typewriter. Think about many things that have, were way in the past and now they still live today. I think the way in which we approach it, the way in which we look at it and we evolve it going forward is different. There are those that are in the market now that are finding different ways, like you hear flight levels and Klaus Leopold's flight levels. That's a different way. That's a different approach, right? And just because, and just like Michael Lloyd's dysfunction mapping, it's another way. We want to create room and space for new ideas, for new ways of doing things, right? That's why, for me, I'm a pragmatist, right? So when it comes, I'm agnostic. I look at the current state, and then I talk to the people to understand what their future state to look like, before even thinking about some approach. Now, if they come to me and say, oh, I want to do Kanban, of course I said, why? Well, Scrum isn't working. Why isn't Scrum working? Scrum is a framework. You just follow the practices. So if you're not able to do that, why do you think you are able to do Kanban, which requires discipline as well? It's a different kind of discipline, but it's still discipline. Eyes go up. Okay, let's think about that. Let's talk about that. And then let's discover what might be a way forward for you. Right? Instead of going and saying, oh, you must do Scrum or slapping Scrum. Well, I think some of this has to do with organizations that are getting it wrong, that got it wrong when it comes to what it means to do Scrum. Scrum Masters are not Jira administrators, right?
Yeah.
We're not scribes. So you literally don't even understand some of the methods, methodologies, frameworks, scale, right? Safe.
Yeah.
Okay, people are doing that. Some people have been successful. Some people have not. Okay, no big deal. Try something else. This is what Agile is about. It's about beliefs. It's about values. It's about behaviors. And then the principles are another thing. That's totally below. When you think about the Agile onion and you think about mindset at the top and tools and processes at the bottom, that's the problem. We flip it. It keeps getting flipped, and it's been flipped for so long that now organizations, because they were doing it wrong, discovered that, or they're making the assumption that it's not working when they don't realize it's not even a thing. It's really intangible in many ways. That's why it's hard to sort of, really understand the value proposition as it relates to coaches. It's so hard to sort of determine, well, what's the value here? What did you, why, what do you even do all day, right? That kind of thing. We have to be change agents in that respect, and we have to educate them on what we do. We don't even do that at the beginning.
Absolutely.
So
I guess what I'm taking away from what you said in terms of if Agile is dead or not is that you first need to define why. If you're an organization, a team, and you decide to have a new way of working or new ways of working, why are you moving away from your current state?
Yeah.
And there is no cookie cutter or a miraculous way.
Yeah. No silver bullet. It's not a one size fits all. But unfortunately, because it's been practiced that way and verbalized that way and operationalized that way, there is that misconception. So Agile will never be dead because it's in here, it's in there, it's in here. So it will never go away. And it may sound, I don't want to say, it's an emotional intelligence piece that I'm coming from. It's like DevOps. They get DevOps, they think DevOps is a practice. Well, DevOps is no, it's very similarly, right? It's a mindset. It's a way of approaching software and operations, right? It's a way of driving cultural change. And because, I also do some of that. So, and I've dealt with, I've worked with a lot of DevOps teams as well. And again, it's like measuring what matters, right? If you're going in just measuring to punish, to find ways to compare teams, well, that's not Agile, right?
No.
So Agile, and if you go in and say, hey, what is it that you're really trying to measure and why, right? Because you don't, what value are you getting measuring teams? What does that got to do with anything? What is that going to get you at the end of the day? Nothing except strife and, and silos. And, maybe you're also going to get people, when you say, okay, if they think you're measuring them, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to try to get over, exactly. Right? Because they want to look like they want to, so you got to be careful with all of that. So Agile is dead. That's just somebody trying to create, what do you call it? They're trying to create a reaction.
Yeah.
That's really what it's all about. And I'm not reacting to that because Agile is not dead. Because if you think Agile is dead, then you think it's a practice or something or a principle. It's not here. It's not there. Well, that's exactly where it's at. So it will never be dead because I'm living it.
I like the perspective that you've just brought into it. Because when I see those kind of comments on LinkedIn,
yeah. But I know
it's a great way to respond rather than reacting. Because if I am reacting, it means that I am binding to
right. Exactly, and so that's why you will never see me get into those. And as a matter of fact, I have my comment section turned off for a reason. I mean, really, because even though I know that I am looking to bring value, right? I'm looking to help others, right? Because that's what I'm passionate about. when I post something, I don't need anybody's, feedback. It's what I believe. So I post it and hopefully somebody will resonate with it. That's it. I'm not trying to be looked at as an expert or looked at as I know everything, because I don't know everything. I'm constantly learning just like everybody else. I will be to the day I die. So we have to stop. Yeah. I won't get into LinkedIn because I got a lot of things I could say about LinkedIn at this point, but I will digress.
I don't often go to LinkedIn. I used to in the past, whereby
Yeah.
what's going on, what's happening. But now I just kind of like limit myself.
It's like, to me, honestly, it's like X. It's no different. It's supposed to be different.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be different. Now you care about how many likes you get or how many followers you get. What? This is a professional site. Why do I care how many followers I have? I'm confused. So, yeah, it's become a little crazy. Now they got these things about, oh, they have this little, I think it's a little, like a light bulb. It makes you a top Agile contributor or something. I'm like, really?
What's that mean?
Because basically you're always posting on LinkedIn.
Ah, right.
So what? So what? Like, it means, just because I don't post on LinkedIn means I'm not a top contributor. I'm writing a book right now. I'm focused on writing my book that focuses on empathy and engineering. I don't have time to be on LinkedIn because I'm trying to write my book, finish my book. So
Coming out.
that's how I want to contribute. Because I know there'll be people that resonate with the book. Trust me, I've got enough feedback to know that people resonate with that topic and want to learn more about that.
Say the topic again, and when is the book coming out?
Oh, it's not going to be coming out to the end of the year because I'm just getting started. I'm going through Manning Publications, which, of course, they publish a lot of technical books, but they also, delve into more emotional intelligence type things, right? This is all nonfiction. This is all nonfiction. And so the book is I'm just getting started on my journey. I'm working with people within Manning Publications to help me. Right now I'm building out chapter 3 on empathy, right? Because I had to do my research and do my writing. So I do my writing in the morning, I do my research at night. And I do 20 minutes of writing a day. Because you gotta keep consistent in order to bang out this work and then hopefully get it to publication. So it likely won't come out till maybe 6 months to a year from now. I want to give a little bit of leniency there, but it'll definitely be out before 2025.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
We can bring you back so that you can share with us empathy, because I know a lot of people that I've worked with in the past, the empathy seems to be
Yeah.
put people or put yourself in other people's shoes, and
No, it's the great things that come out of it, right? It's about that social responsibility, right? It's about the world and what you create for your user, and how do you answer, how do you solve their problems? You gotta be in their shoes to solve their problems, right? And you have to also recognize that there's a lot of differences in the world, and so you have to be empathetic in order to, I think, embrace that notion and then try to create and innovate in a way that is inclusive.
yeah.
So if you don't even think about that because you're just constantly thinking about you and you're not able to stand in the shoes of others, right, or the place of others, you cannot possibly be empathetic nor create anything that helps those people, because what helps one helps some people but not help other people.
Absolutely not. And we
Yeah.
have a lot of things in the mix as well, cultural, religious.
Yep. Absolutely.
Mix as well.
And are engineers willing to step up? And the ones that are coming out in college, right? What are they teaching in college so that they come out with that sense of being willing, being open to being empathetic? And what does that mean to be empathetic? There are many different ways. It's conceptually and pragmatically. There's a lot of different empathetic models out there that many people aren't even aware of, which I hope to bring to light in my book.
Oh, that would be great, especially coming from someone that has a technical background. and having worked as a Scrum Master and now Enterprise Agile Coach, I think you could see that bigger picture from
Yeah.
sides of the equation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
It's-
I want to say huge thank you for today, Taz. It's been fantastic talking to you. We've gone from Scrum Master, DevOps, Kanban trainer, is that, you know, it's just great having that conversation with you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate being able to be given that, like I said, the floor to talk about a lot of this. It's really, it's exciting times. It's inspiring that you're doing what you're doing as well. So keep it up. Keep up the great work. And yeah, thank you for having me on.
Thank you. I do appreciate you joining me this morning. There's the kind of thing I want to do, just have a conversation.
Right.
And you never know where it's going to go, right?
That's true. And you shouldn't, right? Let it flow.
Yeah. So, thank you.
You're welcome.